second row again.
Yeah. So when you talk about affordability, you usually talk about keeping the property taxes low and such. But another issue is that in Toronto now we have the lowest child poverty rates amongst Canada, like all Canada, we're the lowest. So one, why do you think that is? And two, how do you plan on combating the issue of this growing gap?
We have the highest rates of child poverty in the country, and that's nothing to be happy or content or proud about at all, of course. And it's one of the reasons why I initiated measures under our poverty reduction program to help families in particular. So, for example, when we brought in kids travel free on the TTC age 12 and under, that was really meant to help the poorest of families, because it's done universally, so because you can't be checking people's income tax returns when they get on the bus. So we made all kids free 12 and under, but the main beneficiaries of that were intended to be families who don't have a car, who might have 2 or 3 children, who go everywhere on the bus, who go shopping, who go to school, who go to the library, who go to sports on the bus. And for those families, they're saving hundreds of dollars a year because kids travel free 12 and under. The same is true of the low-income transit fare pass. First time it's ever been done. There have been 64 mayors before me, not one of them brought in under the TTC a low-income fare pass, which we now have, so that lower-income people, including their children, can benefit from being able to get a substantial discount on the TTC. It's why we've created a record number of child care subsidies for families that need that help getting child care. It's why we've dramatically expanded the number of rec spaces in the city. And so I would only say to you that while there's much more to be done, we actually have had, for the first time, a very vigilant and determined additional investment in these areas. Student nutrition, the budget and the number of kids benefiting from the budget have doubled in the last 4 years. So we've been very serious about that, but knowing there's much more to be done, with the objective being, including all the other things that are kind of mainstream elements of my platform, building transit, what's that about? Creating a connection to opportunity for families so they can be better off and their children. Affordable housing, I think it speaks for itself that you want those very same families to have more affordable housing and much more supply of affordable housing. And keeping taxes low, because whether it's through their rent or through their home ownership, people can't afford to pay much more in the way of property taxes. So it's a very broad-ranging program, but we're at work on many different parts of it, have been for 4 years, and will intensify our efforts going forward. Yes, over here.
One of the things, Mr. Mayor, that makes Toronto a great city is that it has a very strong civic and community sector. Yeah? And then I think a lot of the issues that have been raised in terms of community safety, or social housing, or child and family poverty, and so on, have to do with the fact that government plays a role, the private sector plays a role, faith leaders play a role. But I think the one of the glues of all this is, for me, is that we have really a very strong civic and community sector. In the last few years, though, especially in communities of color here that have been really affected by high unemployment rate, by high exclusion around on a number of socioeconomic indicators, their community-based organizations are actually disappearing, or they are under-resourced, and so there is a bit of a deficit there. Yeah? So in what ways can we start to really refocus our energy to consider the third sector here, the civic and community sector, as a partner in solution on a number of our system-level challenges? Yeah? So what are some things that we could do going forward with the new council of 25 and yourself, if you're going to, as a mayor, come back or return as a mayor? What are some things that we need to do to actually continue to have a strong community and civic sector, especially of those communities that are affected by a number of system challenges?
I think, as you know, this is where I came from most recently before I was the mayor 4 years ago, that I was the head of Civic Action. And the entire purpose of Civic Action was not just in the kind of the original founding communities of Indigenous, white, and French, English and French, to get people engaged, but to get the entire community engaged. Because I was also the co-chair of the diversity program, and the entire purpose of that was to increase the representation in the ranks and the leadership of our community in the media, in the law, in politics, from the communities that were underrepresented. And I'm a great believer that, frankly, the problems that have been referred to today, whether it's school dropouts, whether it's anti-black racism, whether it's gun violence, whether it's economic opportunity, are not going to be solved by the government. The government has a leadership role to play. The government has some resources that it collects from taxpayers to help apply to these things. But in the end, that money can only be successfully deployed not using government bureaucrats, but using community-based experts. And the greatest experts are not often people that have a PhD, but they're people that have experience dealing with kids in the black community or in the Somali community I referred to, or in this community or that community that needs help. Now, one thing I can't stand up here and say to you, because I don't think it would be the right thing to say, is, well, we're just going to fund every single group that comes along, no matter who they are, no matter what they ask for, and just give them the money. I'd love to be able to say that, but I don't think that's the right thing to do. So I think what we have to do a much better job of in the next term of office, and I intend to do this, and I've said it as recently as last week at the Board of Trade, we've got to engage the entire community, including the business community, big and small, including the academic community, the nonprofit community, the community-based groups, and the governments, to launch what I'll call a crusade on these disconnected young people, especially young people. Disconnected meaning that they don't know their way into the system to get one of those good jobs that's out there. They need some encouragement sometimes in staying in school, some support in that regard. And on it goes. There's a long list of things. And I really want to make sure that we get the maximum effort from the business community, for example, not just because it's the right thing to do for them to live and work in a healthy city, but because they will be among the major beneficiaries of this. The better we do at keeping the kids in school, the better we do at making sure all kids from all backgrounds feel a sense of hope and aspiration to be in the tech jobs, in the film jobs, in the banking industry jobs, in the lawyers' offices. The better we do at having them feel that way, the better off all those sectors of the economy are going to be, because they will have better representation from the diversity that is Toronto, and they will benefit from that. And so it's going to be a significant priority of mine, but it is related as well to the bread and butter things that I'm going to do first and foremost: build transit, address affordable housing, keep taxes low, attract jobs and investment to the community. But then we have to connect those jobs and those investments up to the entire community, and that involves the kind of intermediary role that is played by the community organizations. But we have to pick the ones that are best, that have the best practices and have the best track record of output, and fund them really well so that they can do their job on a much broader scale.
We've got time for about 2 more questions.
I'll tell you, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. So
Trustee within Ward 4, which is in the Jane Fish Committee. So as a trustee, one of my plans was actually to teach young kids how to start up businesses, because especially in this day and age, we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurship. Even in the hip-hop scene, a lot of them are becoming independent artists instead of signing to major labels. So what would be your plan to promote small businesses that will essentially improve the economic well-being of the community?
it's a part of the anti-black racism plan, but one of the things we've done, for example, first time again in history at the City Hall ever, 64 mayors before me, we've never had a social procurement policy before. And the social procurement policy simply says that we're going to make an effort to reach out to minority-led businesses and give them a chance to bid on city purchases and city work. And it's actually there now, and we're doing it. I think we also have to develop a robust program, which we don't have at the moment, of micro-enterprise, where we provide some small degree of support. And oftentimes it isn't support that involves money. It's often support that involves hooking up probably somebody like you mentioned that wants to be an independent artist or an independent business person to somebody with experience, just to say, here's how you get the account set up, here's how you get the initial financing, here's how you get the initial stages of getting, and even it's just about self-confidence. And so I think those are the kinds of things that are key to this. Micro-enterprise support, social procurement, so the government is showing leadership on saying we are going to seek out firms that are new and that are starting up, led by minority-led businesses that we can do business with, and then making sure that that we do the kinds of things you want to do through the school system to educate people about that alternative. I think the same is true, by the way, of skilled trades. I mean, most people are not aware of the option because they just haven't thought about it of setting up a business on their own. Most people are also not aware of the fact there's a huge positive opportunity represented by having a skilled trade at your disposal, where you can get a great job with a great paycheck and a lot of job security. And we have to do a much better job at the school system. When I've asked the kids, you heard me refer earlier to the fact that I've met with groups of kids, like probably a dozen over the course of the summer, big and small, big groups and small groups. And the one thing they overwhelmingly told me is that the advice they get in school about the options they have in front of them for their careers is completely inadequate. They just feel that people go through the motions of saying, yeah, yeah, and in fact they say to me, and I don't have the measurement of this, you might at the school board, that many of the kids who are black or brown end up getting directed and streamed off into you know, the kind of four-year academic, non-academic kind of type course, and that really is an expectation they're not going to go further to college and university.
Personal experience.
Pardon me?
It's a personal experience I've had.
Yeah, so, you know, I think these are the kinds of things that I hope you'll have an opportunity to address at the school board, because I think a lot of those things are based there. But if the school board and the city work in partnership in addressing these things, I think we're going to be able to do a better job of making sure more of those kids end up in a positive place instead of in a place that is sometimes negative or sometimes just really no place you'd want to be. It's kind of no person's land, you know, in terms of not really having a job in front of you or any kind of a career path. Now, the next question coming this way was, I think, right in here somewhere.
Any of the mayor, they all want to make their city affordable. Toronto being the second or third most expensive city in North America, can you help the ordinary household to understand this, how it's going to be affordable to them, or the message is that they need to go and earn more to be able to pay for their bills?
Well, you're never going to find me saying to people you have to go and earn more, because I know that in many cases people don't have any control over how much they earn. You know, I mean, we've all understand that experience of going to whoever you work for and saying, well, I need more money, I need a raise, and the people who you work for saying, well, I'm sure you do, and I'll take that into account and we'll let you know. Look, what I've talked about earlier on is what we have to do to make the city as affordable as possible, knowing that big, successful cities often become more expensive simply through the law of supply and demand and nothing else. And so that's why kids traveling on transit free, 12 and under, is important. It's why having a low-income transit fare pass is important. It's why dramatically increasing the supply of affordable rental housing is important. And it's why keeping taxes low is important, because all of those things, while they don't all affect every person, some people would be affected by every one of those. Taxes, availability of housing accommodation, transit fares, and the like. And so that's why we have to keep these measures coming forward and keep funding them, because that can contribute to people having a more affordable city. It doesn't mean that it's going to be as affordable as they might like, because everybody would name a different number, but it means we've got to keep pushing forward with those initiatives and make sure they're targeted as best we can to people who need the most help, because it is fundamentally important to keep the city healthy, that you have people who can live here from all income groups and who find that they can live a decent life here, and notwithstanding they might make a modest income. Now the next question was right here.
My name is Councillor, and I'm with the Affordability Canadian Family Advocacy Center. And I just want to hear your thoughts on I know that there was a mental health city summit, and what we do at our organization is we work with at-risk families, and we're underground in the homes, and a lot of the issues that we're faced with has to do with mental health, high stress levels, that definitely results in mental health issues. So can you give me more thoughts and follow up on what happened with the mental health city summit?
Yes.
And how that will
Yes.
change for families with mental health issues?
The mental health summit that's been referred to is something I initiated on a national basis, and I brought together mayors from across the country, because what I had discovered in my own first 3 years as mayor was that the biggest single issue that arose around every corner, the policing corner, the homelessness corner, the public health corner, you know, whatever corner you looked around, you found mental health around that corner. And what I felt was happening was not enough to deal with it. In fact, the only situation facing the City of Toronto in which I have used the word crisis to describe it is as it regards mental health and addiction problems, and they're very much related, as you know. And so by calling the meeting together, I was not sort of indicating that there was nothing I could do, but I certainly wanted to get the message across, and we invited people from the other governments to come as well, that this was going to have to be an initiative that was led principally, I think, by the provincial governments, because mental health is part of the healthcare system. That's why they call it mental health. And what we do right now is treat illnesses of the brain differently than we treat a heart ailment or a lung ailment or a kidney ailment. In that we, for example, imagine if we said to people who had a heart attack, well, we'll have you wait 4 or 5 months to get an assessment before we decide what your condition is and what we're going to do about it. When you have a heart attack, or even the symptoms of a heart attack, they rush you right into the hospital, they look you over right away, take all the tests, and then they deal with it. With mental health, we'll sometimes say to people, well, it'll only be 6 months until we can assess what might be the matter with you. And then maybe after that, you might get an appointment with somebody who can help you deal with it. And so I believe that as we did with knee replacements, and you might remember a number of years ago, and when I was the opposition leader at Queen's Park, actually, there were these terrible television stories on TV every second night of people who were crawling up the stairs of their home. They were pulling themselves up the stairs of their home because they couldn't walk up the stairs because they were in such bad need of a knee replacement or a hip replacement. And what did we do? Well, we decided we were going to establish a website on which the waiting times for knee replacements and hip replacements were shown. And it was against a standard that was to be expected. So they said, well, the time should be this many weeks to wait, but not more. And we put the funding necessary forward such that those websites showed pretty much every week that people got the knee replacements and the hip replacements they needed within the appointed time. And I think we're going to have to start doing some of that for mental health and addiction problems, because you said to me what was the upshot of that conference in terms of what people from all the cities said were the two principal needs of people with mental health and addiction problems. They were, number one, access to treatment programs and support of different kinds. So if it's an addiction rehabilitation program, that's one thing, or even just mental health counseling and support. And number two, supportive housing. Because what we did 25 or 30 years ago in this country, as some of you will know, is we closed down big institutions in which people suffering from mental illness were confined. They were basically treated like prisoners. And we said those are no good. People with mental illness, they're sick. They're not criminals. They're not bad people. They're sick. And we should treat them in more a community setting and give them the support they need so they can live more of a normal life. So that was the sort of good news, was we closed those big places down. The bad news was we did not open up the kind of supportive housing that many of those people need so they can live a reasonably normal life in the community, but they have somebody coming to check on them. Are they taking their medications? Are they falling back into depression? Do they need just a little bit of help with something to keep them, kind of in a way that would be the way most